As I'm sure you all know, Saturday evening around 7 p.m., a severe weather event, which we now know as Starlight Tornado, touched down at several locations within the city of Palm Coast. As a result of the aftermath and the survey that followed, yesterday afternoon, under the power vested in me by the Palm Coast City Charter, I declared a local state of emergency. The reason for this is multiple. First, it may entitle our residents in our city to receive compensation from FEMA or other support organizations. Secondly, it will allow the city staff to take extraordinary measures to help restore normalcy to the lives of our citizens who've been affected by this tornado. Speaking of city staff, you can't say enough good things about them. Within moments after the tornado warning was first received, the entire city staff was mobilized on the streets with the primary objective of determining whether or not there were injuries as a result of the storm. Secondarily, to ensure that there were no subsequent injuries, either to residents or to the emergency response staff. Thirdly, was to ensure the utilities and streets remained open and available. I want to give great thanks to our fire department, our building department, code enforcement, did a marvelous job, and they continue to do so. Also, special thanks to Sheriff Jim Manfrey and the Sheriff's Department. Their presence made us all feel safer and facilitated the initial survey and the subsequent cleanup. Also, special thanks to Flagler County, County Administrator Mr. Coffey, County Emergency Services Director. They were there offering their full support. This time I'd like to call upon our Fire Chief, Mike Beadle, to give us an after-event summary and where we go from here. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And then if you will introduce your colleagues.
Yes, sir. I will do that first. With me this morning is Deputy Chief Jerry Forte. I've just asked them to sit. This might be a while, so, but they are available. Deputy Chief Forte is with me. Our new emergency manager to the county, Kevin Guthrie, who, well, I'll get into that, his part that he's played through this. We have Senior Commander Mark Harmon, who's always with us. He was out on the street with us. And then Commander Bob Weber from the Sheriff's Office. If I could, I'll give you what happened where we were the night of the event, where we seem to be today. I'll have Mr. Guthrie come up and explain some of the state and federal avenues we're attempting to reach out to. And then by all means, during this, if there's any questions, anybody, please feel free to wave me down and we'll try to give you an answer. As the mayor just said, Saturday night was the Starlight Parade, and as most of you know that you were there, we started the parade off. We knew that there was weather in the area, so we were watching it diligently. I say we, for those of you that don't know, I was the guy with the white beard and the red hat sitting at the stand when you went by with my wife. We every year, my wife and I are the moderators for the parade. So my duties that night as emergency manager / fire chief for the city went to the deputy chief. About float number 45, as I recall, as my wife and I were calling him coming down the street, Casey Ryan came over and knelt down behind me and whispered in my ear that the parade had been called off, and to which that just kind of threw me in a tailspin, no pun intended. I asked her why, and she said there was a tornado warning. Now all the radios and phones that I have are laying on the desk, and I didn't pick any of them up to see what was going on. Chief Forte had made the decision it was time to call the parade off. So at 6:40, we did just that. We ended the parade and we began public address announcements to everybody in attendance in Town Center to please get to their car, get to a shelter. We had impending weather heading our way. Never did we did not mention tornado at that time. It was just a severe weather event. At 6:58, we did receive that tornado warning from our county emergency management, and Jack's Weather had started sending out these blasts that we were under for some weather. So at 6:58, that warning was issued. At 7:04, the first call came in from Brittany Lane that a tornado had in fact touched down in their neighborhood. Interestingly enough, I got to hear that first 911 call, and they're very good friends of ours. The caller was an emergency room doctor, that it had touched down in her backyard. Yes, it is a very small world. At 7-Eleven, our first units arrived, so within 7 minutes of that call, we had fire personnel in the neighborhood starting to assess the damage. As I was en route, we were getting updates and reports, and at that point, we thought it was in the Bridgehaven area, Brittany Lane area. Upon arrival, you could definitely tell something had happened, and we weren't sure what it was. We do not have the all to, if you will, to make those determinations, but the National Weather Service had 2 meteorologists on the ground with us Sunday who made the determination it was, in fact, an EF1 tornado that touched down. Within 30 minutes of that call, I received a call via radio from EM1 requesting permission to enter the city of Palm Coast for assistance. That would be Mr. Guthrie. So within 30 minutes, he was standing next to me, and we were starting to make those decisions and the plans of what we, in fact, we're going to need for the days to come, if you will. I was on the phone with FP&L, so if anybody in the city lost their power, that was my fault. I just pretty much told them to throw the switch real quick until we got a handle as to where we actually needed. I give kudos to FP&L. Within 30 minutes of that call, they were with me. I had 3 trucks sitting there with a supervisor, gave them the synopsis of what we knew we had at that point. They started going street to street and started to isolate streets so that we could get the infrastructure and our sewer systems and traffic lights and those things back up and running. I counted Sunday morning at some point 15 FP&L trucks within the city, so they rallied very quickly. Excuse me. The other side of things was our dispatch center and our deputies. They responded, and we had them in the streets with the fire trucks. Most importantly, and I have forgotten to mention, these people are our dispatchers. They were receiving hundreds of calls at the same time. They said that the room, just every phone was blinking and lighting up for people reporting this. The dispatch center made the decision to pull out the sheriff's mobile command vehicle, which I had requested, and they said, sorry, we already have it involved. They took that to the EOC, plugged it in, if you will, and that became the central dispatch center for our event in Bunnell with dispatchers assigned to us. So we had communication through dispatch, flawless, never had an issue. We called, they answered. And then we began that what we call windshield survey. Fire crews were on the streets reporting back damage to the best that they can. Now, granted, it's dark. It was still raining a little bit. We had residents everywhere. We had down power lines everywhere. We had damage that we didn't even know we had at that point. So the crews were in there trying to get a handle on that. At the same time, a call was made to our utilities department for their assistance, and our Mr. Abreu from the building department. Nestor was on the scene by about 9:30 and had his investigators and his support team on standby ready to come in. So things were just moving along better, I will say, better than I had thought they would. Knock wood, and I'm going to say this a couple times to knock wood, no injuries, no loss of life. And that, for what we went through, was amazing in and of itself. I chose we needed a command post, so I took the library. We were going to use that as a staging point. Typically in our operations, and we set up a command structure, we start calling out those resources and bringing them in. We got to put them someplace. So we're going to use the library. Mr. Guthrie said, well, maybe we can open it up, bathroom facilities, logistical support. So we did that. So that became the forward command. About that same time, I knew this was coming, was the media was going to show up. And they started getting word, and as somebody just told me a little while ago, yeah, we were out for dinner and our phones started blowing up. Everybody in the restaurant was playing with their phone. That's a good thing. That means that people were being made aware of it. The bad part is people woke up Sunday morning and didn't have a clue. There's an interview on the radio that a gentleman says, well, yeah, it came up so fast we didn't know. The warning went out at 6:58. If you have a little red box that beeps and has that weather alert on it, you would have known there was you had 6 minutes. 6 minutes versus no minutes is a good thing. So we're going to push that, and we've been pushing that. We had a resident in the B section, and the husband said, turn that thing off. It always goes off and nothing ever happens. We now live in the it's not going to happen to us town that we all watch on TV. It did happen to us. So we're pushing those kinds of alerting systems that we can all purchase readily. So back to the event. We spent the rest of the night trying to get a handle on things. We were pretty confident we had no injuries. We left our fire crews, our public works crews, who by that point had found a couple areas we didn't know about. One in particular was Fulton Lane. You could not even get down the street. Crews walked house to house for us on Fulton Lane because of the large trees that were down. Tony Capella called me, showed up within the hour. Now granted, you're all going to say, what happened to the parade? As we canceled the parade and we evacuated that, I chose to leave Deputy Chief down there. He handled that incident. I started on the second. And so theoretically, we had two disasters, if you will, or two major events in the city going on at the same time. With the help of city staff, it is my understanding everybody was sheltered where they needed to be sheltered. That goes from some of our students to elected officials to marching bands, everybody that was at that parade. We needed to do something with them. I've been asked, well, did you have a plan? For those kinds of events, you always have the plan. And as somebody said, well, we couldn't get them to line up in their designated spot. Do you think they were going to listen to an emergency action plan? Don't know. The plan was to evacuate the park, to make the announcements. Hopefully everybody's going to get to a car and get sheltered. The Chimento building was used as a shelter, as was FPC High School, was opened up immediately for people to get into. Along with the sheriff's office, we were trying to get that word out. People say they never heard it, and I can believe it. During a time of panic like that, you don't hear things or you don't think rationally. We were making those attempts to get that word out for people to go where they needed to be to get out of the weather. We didn't think we were going to have that event, the tornado, but a tornado warning, don't know what's going to happen. So it's my understanding within 30 minutes of the cancellation of the parade, a little after 7, when that tornado touched down, we had everybody, and I'll say sheltered or sheltered in place or leaving the park. Leaving the park was an issue I couldn't get out with lights on the little red car, but we finally made our way out. But from what I understand and what I've heard, it was a very orderly evacuation, if you will. Thanks to the sheriff's office and the pre-planning of the parade, we knew the traffic was going to go one way, everybody was going to go that way. It was just going to take a little bit more time than what we had anticipated due to the storm. So back up to the issue. We knew Belterre and Bridgehaven had been damaged, and then, as I said, Baring Place, and all those. Then we got the reports in the F. The long and the short of it was we were Saturday night and into Sunday morning trying to just get a handle on injuries in our citizens. At 6:30 Sunday morning, city staff arrived at city offices to begin the next phase, and then that next phase was damage assessment by the trained people in the building department, as well as going back to ensure that we were making accountability of our citizens and we didn't miss anything the night before. That went through all day on Sunday. The American Red Cross came in. Their disaster relief teams are with us. They're on the streets as we speak, and they actually fed all the crews that were out working on Sunday afternoon, so our hats go off to them. They were in the game real early with us. Sunday was a day of what do we need, where do we go, how do we take care of things. As most of you know, my decision was not to let the news media in Saturday night. We didn't feel it was safe. We had areas blocked off, and I stick by that. But we knew we had to get the news media, and that's what, and they're the eyes and the ears of us a lot of times to get our message out. So Sunday morning it was decided we were going to have a press conference at 9 o'clock, which we held. And then we allowed the news media to go into those areas. One thing I would say it here, and I've been saying it all along in all the interviews I've been doing, is people that don't live in the area don't need to be in the area. It was very unfortunate to see so many people that want to go up and see the destruction and the ill fate of others, that we couldn't keep people out of the streets, walking their dogs, taking pictures, these kinds of things. And the poor gentleman who totally lost his house, that's probably a picture that every resident probably halfway across the country has seen, which is an okay thing. But he's got a lot of rebuilding to do, and thanks to his neighbors, he's on his way to that, and the help of the Red Cross. So we ask our residents, when something happens, please stay out of the way. We see it on TV day in and day out of these disasters, and we don't need people getting in everybody else's way while we try to rebuild. So that was Sunday's chore, trying to get the streets open, power restored. yesterday was a new day, and I sent an email out and told everybody to look out the window and look at the sun coming up because it's Monday morning. We all have to go back to work. And by that I meant Monday morning was Monday morning. People had to go to work. People had jobs to do. And we all have things to do. We went back into our normal operation. Although there's 170 houses out there with significant damage, and we need to take care of those people. So we've kind of split that responsibility with city staff. Yesterday we still had inspectors out on the street. We had help from the state coming in. Investigators came in. We were very thankful because my count as of yesterday afternoon, I understand there were 4 contractors or companies that weren't supposed to be. By that, maybe they weren't licensed, maybe they didn't have insurance, maybe, I don't know. But these folks helped our staff and got them off the street so that our citizens are getting the quality people, the licensed people, and the right people to do the right job for them. Awful lot of people just showing up to want to help. We want to help. We want to help. On that note, I'd throw out a word of caution to all our civic groups and our churches. On Sunday afternoon, some of the churches were bringing carloads of their kids in to help clean up yards. I can't say that it's an admirable thing to do, although for insurance purposes, and I actually saw one family working on their property politely ask them to remove themselves from the area. There's a lot of insurance issues. We don't need kids running around doing these things. I know I've been called by the Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. There will be assistance in places those groups can help us in later days to come. This isn't, and that's the sad part. For most people, it's a 2-day event. For the people that live in our areas, it's going to be months, if not years, before they get back on their feet. So there will be things along the way. We'll get into some of the volunteer issues and donations that's set up as well. And I'll let Mr. Guthrie talk to that on the county level. So today, yesterday we started our morning briefings, and I'll hold this up. It's called an Incident Action Plan. Our IAPs are written every day. They're given out to all the crews in the street, both electronically and anybody that needs it in hand. This IAP has all the information for anybody working the incident that they may need: phone numbers, areas, contact information, who, what, where, and when. We meet on a daily basis. They're 8 o'clock briefings every morning with the overhead team, those in command of each of their divisions. We go around the room and everybody gets a handle on what they're doing. Tree removal has been our biggest topic. What are we, how are we, what can we do? Through our public works crews as well as Waste Pro, pickup actually started late yesterday afternoon with Waste Pro in the streets, and now these are the affected areas. This isn't the entire city. These are the areas that were affected by the storm. Started picking up tree removal, the vegetation. We're not looking for construction removal, or this is a good time to throw out your couch or throw out the TV that doesn't work, because that's going to start happening. We're not picking those things up. Waste Pro has 3 trucks, I believe, this morning, started bright and early with the claw trucks picking up debris, and they will be going through the streets until we determine through the team that they're not needed anymore. Along with that is our public works team, and Tony's crews are out on the street, and they're working those issues too. We're still checking for that tree that's bent over the house and different safety issues. They're still out there and trying to report to them. Any citizen that needs help of any kind, again, is to call the city. We have our customer service reps are on our team. They're getting the information we're giving them every morning, answering their questions. Please give us a call. We want to be there. We're not leaving. As I was telling people, we're not leaving. We're not going anywhere, and this is our job to help you get back into shape. And we've been through, unfortunately, disasters before, and we will bounce back from this. So that's basically where we are. The big question that's been arrived is we want to help, donations, where to, how to. In a minute, I'll bring up Mr. Guthrie from the county, let him tackle that, as well as the question on everybody's mind and the big word, FEMA. Is FEMA going to help? As the mayor alluded to, there are processes and steps that we must go through. That first step was what the mayor did yesterday by signing a declaration of emergency. I've already been asked TV interviews why we took so long to implement that. Well, it wasn't that we took so long to do that. That's one of those paperwork necessities when we get to that point. If we feel we're going to be in a position of reimbursement, then we make those steps. So what we're doing with the guidance of the county's emergency management, the state's emergency management, these people have been through this numerous times. We are right on track to do what we need to do to get reimbursement, to get those funds back if we qualify. We're still in that. We're not sure. One day it looks good, one day it's something else. So it's a very lengthy, long process.
Chief, let me interject before you bring up Mr. Guthrie. City Council, Mayor, this is the other benefit of the declaring an emergency is it gives me authorization to waive some of our normal procedures. And someone said something about, well, yard debris pickup day. Every day is yard debris pickup day in the affected area. That we're not doing our normal process. It is going to cost a little money. We don't know exactly how much, but it will be a reasonable amount. But that's what we were going to do, is help that all those neighborhoods. Another good example is our building department is actually on the streets issuing permits as needed. In other words, people don't have to come in to get the permit. We will issue the permit right out there on the spot for the minor repairs and construction and work with them. So we have the boots on the ground and are taking those kind of extra steps and not going through our normal procedures right now. And we're documenting all of this, not just for the federal and state government, but for our own information. And when it's all over, we'll report to you as to what the cost is. But right now, we are instructing our crews to go get it done and assist the neighborhood. I have to add that the neighbors and the residents are great. I mean, just they're getting after it and they're taking care of each other. And so I'm just very proud that we are able to help them help themselves. And they've been great to work with too on that. And we'll talk a little more after you hear about the volunteers and those type of things. But just wanted to emphasize one of the benefits of declaring an emergency. This isn't before the event emergency like an evacuation. This is after recovery type situation.
Thank you, Mr. Land. That's what I was going to say. We're now in that recovery mode. The last thing that I wanted to bring up about the declaration is that it allows our CEMP, our City Emergency Management Plan that we have with the city that's been approved through the county and as well as the state to kick in those things, and we can issue those permits in the street, and we can be a little lax on some of those things that we need to get the infrastructure, get our citizens taken care of and back up to speed. So as Mr. Landon said, it's a wide range process that's going to keep going forward. At this time, I would bring up our newest member to the county staff. That's Mr. Kevin Guthrie. As I keep saying, welcome aboard. Welcome to Palm Coast. I'd ask Mr. Guthrie, he'll bring up some of the county issues and some of those other issues on the federal and state level that I know are on everybody's mind. Kevin?
I will say, first of all, you guys are in really great hands. You know, when I got out there, Chief Beadle had already established command as he does, as part of any protocol does. And it was just one of those things where I just came in and said, hey, how can I support you? You know, literally I stood out there with a sheet of paper and started just documenting some things. So the initial response, in our world, what we call the initial attack was second to none. And I say that, I don't say that tongue in cheek, I say that with all sincerity. I have been on national type 1 disasters. I've represented the state of Florida as a planned section chief in BP oil spill, Hurricane Katrina, Wilma, Hurricane Andrew, all over the country. And I will put that response on Saturday night up against probably the top 3 that I've ever been to. So I want you to know that I was very, very impressed with how the city came together, and within a matter of an hour, you've got crews out there cutting trees and pushing back debris. It was pretty incredible. And I mean that with all sincerity. Been all over the country, folks, from sea to shining sea, if you will, even one international deployment, and that's among some of the best work I've ever seen. So I just want to start off with that. I wanted to give you an update as to where we're at as far as the county in support of the city. Yesterday I was in receipt from Mr. Landon and Chief Beadle, the mayor's proclamation and a declaration of local emergency. I took that last night as an emergency resolution before the Board of County Commission, who issued a supporting resolution to continue on so that we can go to that next step, which is up to the state. The state's already been made aware of our resolution at the county level and your declaration at the city level. So all of those hoops are being jumped through that are required to be done. I'll just run down a very quick situational report from my side of the house. As you may have seen me out Sunday in the Sheriff's Office helicopter from St. John's, and if you guys have any contact with St. John's County Sheriff, I would really appreciate you just sending him an email or something to say, hey, thanks for letting us use the helicopter, because obviously you guys know that the Flagler County helicopter is down for avionics upgrade. But I did fly over it, and the National Weather Service Jacksonville issued their interim report on this incident. Again, the chief said that it was a EF1 tornado that touched down. What a lot of people may not have seen in that report is that there was over 1.5 miles of continuous destruction through the B section and into the F section. A lot of people think that that stopped in the B section towards the western portion, but believe it or not, if you go about a mile north of Palm Coast exit on I-95, you will see where the tornado literally cut through the middle of the interstate. And a lot of people don't know that, and then continue right on into the F section before it bounced back up, if you will. So we had, from start to finish, from the Espanola area all the way out to the Hammock Dunes area, it ended up being over 9 miles of touchdown. And a lot of people, that's been lost, if you will. So this was a EF1, and it was significant. You know, it really was a significant event. So I encourage you to read that report. Again, it's the National Weather Service Jacksonville. My planner, who is here, has a copy of that if anybody, and I will make sure that Mr. Landon has it available as well. But here's where we're at from a county perspective. Again, we did issue our resolution last night. We are in a partial activation at the county level, which is we will take our EOC, we've already done that, to a level 2 activation with the following components activated. Obviously, City of Palm Coast is handling the majority of these positions, and a lot of that's, again, a misnomer. It doesn't have to be county staff in that activation. We are doing this with city staff. So command is being run by, as you heard, Chief Beadle, Public Information Officer Cindy Lane, in a joint, what we would refer to as a joint information center with the Sheriff's Office, Commander Weber, and then also the County Public Information Officer has been in support of me, Carl Laundrie. But the face of this event and the voice of this event is the City of Palm Coast Public Information Officer when it comes to public information. I think that's important that we point that out. Operations is obviously being run by the City of Palm Coast. Everybody, if you will, is all in when it comes to operations right now for the City of Palm Coast, and y'all have that covered, including divisions, groups, and assignments there. The planning role, one of the things very early on, and I spoke with Mr. Landon yesterday morning. I said, listen, I said, operations, you're all in. One of the things that we've got to get going, though, is the documentation of this incident so that we can make those next steps in the process. You're all into that. I will take on that burden of getting with your staff, getting the documentation, categorizing it, summarizing it, filing it, so that we can move to the next level. And yesterday morning at about 11:30-ish, we set that plan into action. I will say, as part of putting a face with that, my plan section chief, who's sitting behind me, Jennifer Stagg, she's actually going to be operating as a documentation unit leader for the county and for the city, of compiling all that information and making it available to all sources, including the state and federal government. Addition to the documentation unit, we obviously, within the City of Palm Coast, have the damage assessment unit. And then, most importantly, I think what's centric to everybody's minds right now is the volunteer donations management. I did last night activate, or I say last night, yesterday afternoon after our meeting at approximately 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I activated our volunteer donations management group within the EOC, and Susie Gamblane is our coordinator there. She is now the official face of volunteer donations management in Flagler, or I'm sorry, not Flagler County proper, and for the City of Palm Coast. So, Mayor, your wife should not have to field too many more of those phone calls. And since we do have news media present in the room, I'll just go ahead and say this. Any volunteer donations management that anybody is interested in giving is, of course, area code 386-597-2950. That's 386-597-2950, and that's Flagler Volunteer Services. In support of Flagler Volunteer Services, Sherry Taylor at the state level of Florida Volunteer Services, they are poised and ready to assist in any way, shape, form, or fashion that they can. So what I want to talk to you a little bit right now as far as volunteer donations and management goes is a little concept of operations, if you will. Very early on, Ray Parkhurst called me up in this event. In fact, he called me the night of the storm at about 11:30 at night, and he says, Kevin, what can we do to help? And I said, Ray, meet me at 6:30 tomorrow morning at the City of Palm Coast, and we'll get you involved. He was there. He was actually there early, which that's just the nature of what he does.
Red Cross, you didn't mention.
I'm sorry.
Who he's with.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Manager. Ray Parkhurst is our local chapter designee for American Red Cross. He was here, he got started, and he has been the face of volunteer, if you will, in those communities that have been affected. He's gone and done door-to-door assessments, spoke with people, providing services, seeing where the gaps are at, reporting back to us where the gaps are at. So we are, what we've done as far as a concept of operations, and I mentioned this morning in our briefing, is Mr. Parkhurst and the American Red Cross are going to stay that voice, if you will, or that face in the community, since he's meeting with everybody on a daily basis. And then he's going to communicate those things back to Susie on any gaps that the American Red Cross cannot fill. And then we'll fill that with local Flagler Volunteer Service folks, and we're going to look for ways to get those who have already requested a volunteer, such as Matanzas High School wants to go out there and do some type of project. We're going to make that happen. So the people here locally, there's going to be the American Red Cross on it, but as in the coming days, you're going to see a local face out there doing some work and things like that. So all of those folks that have contacted your wife and others, we're going to make sure that they get plugged in some way, somehow. All right. Beyond that, I just wanted to kind of give a real quick report from the county level and then my interaction with the state level in reference to funding programs that may or may not be available. One of the things that we're having to do right now is we have to get this incident documented and find out how much money has been spent roughly in what we refer to in the FEMA world and the emergency management world as Category A and Category B expenses. Category A expenses are those that are debris-related removal cost, including personnel, equipment, tonnage, all that stuff. And then Category B is protective measures. Any type of protective measure we did, whether that's in, if it's from city finance to firefighters out on the street, any type of protective measure we took at any level, we have to document and get that. Those are the two figures right now that the state of Florida is waiting on me, because there is a outside remote chance, and I don't want to take up a whole lot of time doing a training, but I think it's important for everybody to have a clear understanding of how the process works. Our current threshold in Palm Coast and Flagler County is somewhere around, and I'm going to look back to Jennifer just to double check myself, $335,000-ish. Once we meet that level in those Category A, B, and all the way up to G and H levels, then we have met our threshold. We can declare a state of emergency. That's right where we believe we're at. That's what we've done up to the state of Florida. Now, the state of Florida's threshold is much higher than that. It's somewhere in the upper $60 million area. So you can have a situation where a county meets a threshold and the state does not. And typically on a day-to-day basis, that would not warrant a federal declaration. However, I say this, there is an outside, very small percentage remote possibility, because of a precedent that has been set in the past, that if it's of such economic impact to the city and the county, that we can be considered by the federal government for reimbursement, even though the state did not meet their threshold. All right? So I'm not saying we're going to get funds, but I will say the state of Florida, Leo Lachette at the state of Florida Bureau Chief for Response, he has committed to us in running through the process, documenting the process, and then reporting our information up to the next level, so that there very well may be something we can do there. Probably more appropriately is that we will qualify for is what is referred to as the SBA plan, all right, that's small business assistance, okay? Now, I know it says small business assistance, and somebody's going to say that's listening in right now, well, we didn't have any businesses affected. Once again, it's kind of FEMA, and I'll just leave it at that. It's a misnomer. What we can do is, so long as we have a 40% diminution in value of 25 homes in the affected areas, then, and there's a couple other hoops that we have to jump through, but that's the meat of it. And those property values include not only just the box, but it also includes screen enclosures, 40% diminution in value of the fair market value of that property, 25 homes, then we will most likely be opened up for SBA loans. So what does that mean? It may very well mean that our homeowners in certain situations that meet the 40% diminution in value and so on, will be eligible for up to $30,000 in loans from the government to, in essence, do a stopgap, if you will, to kind of help them through this process, because many times insurance agents and payments and all that get tied up for months. But we don't want that to happen. We want people to start recovering, and that's the phase we're in right now, is recovery. So that's a little bit about where we're at in the process. We are diligently moving forward with that. I do know for a fact, we got it confirmed last night about 5:30-ish, Chief Beadle and I were together, that the FEMA SBA team has been mobilized. They will be here on Thursday morning at 9 a.m. So Thursday morning at 9 a.m., people in the affected areas will start seeing vests that say FEMA SBA on them. As a part of that team, there will also be members from the state of Florida. There will also be at least one member from local damage assessment. There will be one member from the property appraiser's office. And then there's also going to be, and again, I think Chief Beadle publicly, this is a very good training opportunity for my county side of the house. And he has agreed to let one person from the county tag along just for the training and education purpose of, if this ever happens again, at least somebody's got some idea of what goes on at that level. So FEMA damage assessment, or I'm sorry, not damage assessment, but FEMA SBA teams will be here starting Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. So people in the community can and will see those folks moving house to house, doing it yet again, another assessment. But that's what they got to do. They got to take what our damage assessment teams have provided, go back behind them, verify, and say, yes, we agree with this, yes, we agree with this. And once we get to the level, once they get to that 25 homes that meet the 40%, they won't go any farther, because they'll say, yes, SBA is now available. Then they'll bring in probably a bus, an SBA bus, plant a dead center, and start processing people. So this process is going to take a little while, but we will see the fruits of that process starting on Thursday at 9 a.m. So with that being said, I'll maybe entertain questions right now that the council might have.
I would like to add one more thing before we go into questions. One of the processes we go through is we discuss every morning what we call unmet needs. What we've heard from the residents is that they feel like a need is not being met. And the only thing that our crews, and in this case Red Cross, has indicated that they've heard is the response from insurance companies. Not a surprise. So this morning, I authorized having one or two of our customer service people actually get out of the office and go onto the street and go door to door with Red Cross representatives, and anybody that feels like they are not getting a response from their insurance company, that if they would like us to, we will right there on the spot call their carriers on behalf of the city. And I told them to use my name and say that we need your help and we need it quickly, and see if we can't get some response from insurance company as quickly as possible. And then also, Mr. Guthrie and I will contact the state insurance commissioner's office to make sure that they know that, little old Palm Coast here does exist, and that we do need some help, and make sure that the insurance companies are not ignoring us. So that's another little extra that we're going to go through to try to assist people in getting the private sector out here and responding as quickly as possible.
Mr. Lannon, will this city person be well identified?
Absolutely. We'll have probably emergency vest on, ID, be with Red Cross representative that's already contacted them to make sure they know that this is an official person and not just...
Having been through more than a few tornadoes in my home state of Missouri, I can tell you that looting is a very serious thing, and I know that the chief and the sheriff are looking for that. So I would say that anybody that's in a neighborhood that they don't live in is probably going to be subject to investigation.
Absolutely. We covered that also.
Yes.
And made that very clear.
Yeah, just one more point to that. I spoke with Under Sheriff Rick Staley via email last night, and he, I told him, continue the meter running, if you will, on the protective measures, because we're going to cover that until the last boot is off the ground, and when we are fully finished with this recovery phase and social restoration phase, which may take weeks and months. If he assigns an extra deputy every day to the B section or whatever the case would be, that's a protective measure that until the mayor and the county say we are back underneath a normal operation, however long that may take, then those costs associated with that will be, we'll keep documenting them and sending them up the chain to see what we can get reimbursed on.
Let me piggyback on that too. Our requirements is the declaration of emergency is for 7 days only. After that time, the mayor can either let it expire or extend it for another 7 days. Ultimately, there will be another proclamation by the mayor declaring the emergency over, so it is formally then over. And we will work with the team to determine that and keep the mayor up to date as to where we are and what we need from that declaration standpoint. But that's how that process works.
Anybody have any questions of me?
I got Mr. Guthrie, a big wow factor. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
You've been very refreshing, and it was great to see how you've worked with our team. Everybody, I mean, just I've been through a number of these in my career, and this is the way it's supposed to work. From the sheriff's office to everybody. I mean, I can't name them all. But Mr. Guthrie, being new to the community, it was welcome to Palm Coast, but he has shown his worth already.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that compliment. Thank you.
He may be new to the community, but we've unfortunately worked other events through the years, and he is a welcome asset to this community. And I'm very glad he was standing next to me Saturday night at 7:30. With that, we're back to normal operations, whatever that means. We are currently in the streets. Our crews are still going through the streets. Sheriff's office, as has been said, is still on the streets. As I said, our team, our overhead, the top of the lists are here. If anybody had any questions, Sheriff's Department, I brought Deputy Chief Forte in. Senior Commander Carmen's here. We're here to entertain any questions, or Mr. Mayor, we'll turn it back over to you.
Do we want to hear from the sheriff's representative?
It's okay by me.
Bob, do you have anything
Commander?
you'd like to add?
Just that the experience was very stressful I'm sure for the residents, but we really appreciate the cooperation that we had from the city government, from the city fire department. It was terrific, and also from the county emergency management. Being a resident of the community, I found an outstanding response all the way across the board, and I commend you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, I would also want to stress, outside of the affected area, it's business as usual.
Absolutely.
We have the resources to take care of the rest of the community. Trash pickup will be regular. The rest of the community should not see anything unusual. Obviously, maybe emails will be answered a little slower as we're taking care of priorities and those type of things. But as far as the services out there, we are business as usual.
I would thank the city of Benel, city of Flagler Beach, and the county. We threw everything we had it from our city standpoint. But as I say time and time again, life goes on and other events happen. We had 4 or 5 calls during that initial response that we needed to rely on the surrounding municipalities to help us. And that's what our interlocal agreements and our closest unit responses and all the things we talk about for years and years. And it worked. We had other units in the city covering, protecting our citizens while we were still gearing up and getting things. So I'd like to thank them as well as we go through this. Mr. Mayor, anything else?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief. Keep up the good work. I just have to mention, a year or so ago when the city was considering bringing median landscape maintenance in-house, we talked about fiscal savings, which have been realized. But I also commented at the time and subsequently that there's a collateral benefit by having that additional crew in-house, we have that much more capability of responding in times of emergency. I hope that wasn't prophetic, but that certainly was the case. Council members, any comments on this issue? I want to thank you for your presence, your participation. City Council was on scene at the City Hall, ready to do whatever they needed to do, getting the briefings so that they could correspond with their constituents. I think all in all, it was just a very, very well-handled event. Let's never see one again.